Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, March the 4th, 2024. So let me just go over the structure of this video. To begin with, I'm going to look at what's going on astrologically this week. I'm going to sort of do a blow-by-blow account looking at the main astrological influences as I see it. Having done that, I'm going to consider how these astrological influences may have an impact on particular famous people. For example, I don't know, our old favourite, Volodymyr Zelensky, or Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, or who else? Janet Yellen, and even George Soros. I've looked at these people before. Again, this is a time when these people could be impacted by the week's events. One particular event, though, I am focusing on happens towards the end of the week, over the weekend, and that is a square aspect between Mars and Uranus. Once I've done that, I'm going to be considering the I Ching. So I'm going to give my usual warning that if you don't want your I Ching done for this week, if you don't want a forecast, when I come to the I Ching, I would recommend that you just stop watching the video, because this forecast only covers people who are actually watching the I Ching segment of the video. So if you don't want your forecast done if you don't want your I Ching done, as soon as I come to the I Ching segment, and I'll give some warning, then you can just stop watching the video and you can look at something else. So if you do watch my I Ching forecast, I'm going to divide it up into 4 sections. First, I'm going to have a general interpretation. Then I'm going to look at money, then career and business, and finally relationships. To begin with, then, I'm going to look at what's happening this week from an astrological perspective. Again, taking a blow-by-blow account, and you can see I've got some pictures of some of the people who I think might be impacted by this week's events, particularly by the Mars square Uranus. There's Rishi Sunak, British Prime Minister. There's George Soros, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky, Jeremy Corbyn, former leader of the Labour Party, and there is Wendy Williams, who I looked at pretty recently. Okay, so let's. So this is the chart. This is the starting positions of the planets when the week starts. So this is, March the 4th, 2024, set for New York, set at midnight, as Monday starts. The first aspect of the week is a 45-degree aspect between Jupiter and Neptune. There is Neptune at 26 degrees 52 Pisces, and there is Neptune at 11:52 Taurus. So Jupiter 45-degree angle. Jupiter and Neptune in this 45-degree angle. So when you've got a Jupiter-Neptune aspect, it's often about fantasy. It's about faith. Jupiter is looking for something else. Jupiter likes to expand. Jupiter is looking for new horizons. And Neptune is about dissolving boundaries. So many of us are looking for some sort of wider ideology or belief or religion to just become part of. So we may get a bit of craziness, actually, at the beginning of the week. People getting obsessed about particular causes. People believing that things are possible, which of course in reality are not possible at all, because I do think with Jupiter semi-square Neptune there is a touch of fantasy. So if we find ourselves having wonderful ideas at the beginning of a week, or especially if we find ourselves in a group of people who are focused around an ideology, whether we're meeting these people physically or over the internet, we do have to be careful. And plans in general, we just might not really be very practical about it. And I think you can see, Jupiter is in Taurus. Jupiter likes to be practical. Jupiter likes to have good, solid plans when it's in Taurus. But semi-square Neptune in Pisces, things can get very confused. And what starts off as a nice idea can actually, in certain cases, turn into a real disaster. But it's not all bad at the beginning of a week. Okay, I shouldn't say that Jupiter-Neptune is always bad. We can be spiritual, or we can be religious, or we can have beliefs, and that's fine. But we just have to keep it real, and we have to look beyond the situation because it's so easy to get lost. Okay, so aside from that, there is a sextile between Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury is at around 18. Sorry, Mercury is sorry, got that wrong. There's a sextile between Mercury and Uranus. Sorry, got that wrong. So there's a sextile, Mercury sextile Uranus. There you can see Mercury is at sort of 1827 Pisces at the beginning of a week. Uranus is at 1940 Taurus, so Mercury moving towards the sextile of Uranus. It's quite an exciting sextile. Sextiles are about talent, having to work hard at something in order to get the results. And this may link into this idea of the Jupiter semi-square Neptune. I said that it was about fantasy, about having plans which may have absolutely no hope of being realized. But with Mercury sextile Uranus, maybe there is some hope there, because Mercury is about good ideas, but perhaps it's about ideas which have the possibility of being realized, not least because we're able to put a bit of work into it. There might be a sort of sudden inspiration how to get something done. Moving on, and on Wednesday, which is Wednesday the 6th, the Sun makes a semi-square to Pluto. Sun semi-square Pluto can be about power and how power is exercised. Some of us could be really into the idea about being in control. Others may feel afraid about control. Who has the control? Is it us or is it someone else? And if we're afraid that someone else has got control with Sun semi-square Pluto, it may be that we feel we have to keep something hidden. Pluto can hide what it touches. And so we may feel that there's something precious that we don't really want other people to know about. We don't want the world to know about. Maybe we don't want the government to know about it. Okay, it's usually best to come clean, isn't it? I don't know. But Sun semi-square Pluto, yeah, secrecy could be quite important. Towards the end of a week, Mercury moves on and makes a conjunction with Neptune. I think that this Mercury conjunct Neptune is almost triggering the Jupiter semi-square Neptune. So Jupiter is in exact semi-square at the beginning of the week. The semi-square is starting to break up, but to an extent Mercury making a conjunction with Neptune starts to reconnect some of the energies, and Mercury conjunct Neptune in Pisces can be very confused. Mercury is how our brain works. It's about our cognitions. It's about communication. It's how information flows. And things are already a little difficult with Mercury in Pisces because really Mercury doesn't work particularly well in the sign of Pisces. It just does get confused. But then you make Mercury conjunct Neptune, and we could be really at sea. At least that is a possibility. And we could be vulnerable to deception. We may completely misunderstand and misinterpret what we hear. But we could do the same thing. We'll be quite deceptive ourselves if we want to be. And the things we say might be misinterpreted. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction could also be connected with psychic communication. That is a standard traditional interpretation of Mercury conjunct Neptune. I think many beginner astrologers get excited about Mercury-Neptune conjunctions. It could be about psychic power, tuning into something spiritually. But I think it's easy to be too cynical about that. As far as I'm concerned, psychic ability is there, it's real, and I think we may have the opportunity to pick some important information up through our psychic senses. I suppose the question is making sense of it. Yes, we may be able to pick up stuff emotionally, mentally, people's thoughts, people's feelings, they come our way, we pick it all up. But are we able to make sense of it? We may get it confused. We may just misinterpret it. So it's not enough to pick up loads of stuff about someone. We have to make sense of it. And we also must not be overwhelmed by it. So if you happen to work as a psychic or your psychic abilities are important to you, be a little careful with this Mercury conjunction Neptune. Yes, your psychic abilities may be very good, especially good, but they could be overwhelming, they could be deceptive, and you may have a, a decoding problem. Because I suppose that's one thing you've got to do as a psychic. You take in the signals and then you've got to decode it or break the code. But breaking the code may be quite difficult. Then we move on to the weekend, and the weekend is arguably where the action is taking place. So over the weekend we see a square aspect between Mars and Uranus. So Mars is going to be in Aquarius and Uranus is going to be in Taurus. So Mars square Uranus, the Mars-Uranus connection can be quite difficult. It can be quite dangerous. It can be risk-taking. Things can go wrong. We may be too hasty. In the world at large, there can be acts of violence, acts of rebellion. People are going to be stubborn. They're not prepared to be flexible, especially, Mars is in Aquarius, Uranus is in Taurus. These are two fixed signs. There's not much flexibility there. It's all about breaking, isn't it? Not going to compromise. And so that Mars square Uranus could be really difficult. Then on Sunday, right at the end of the week, there's a new moon. So the new moon, this is the new moon, March the 10th, so that's a Sunday, March the 10th, 2024. The new moon is in Pisces, 20 degrees 17 Pisces. I'm going to talk about this new moon more in a video over the next in a few days' time. But my general impression of the new moon is I think it's going to be coloured by the Mars square Uranus. Even though the new moon doesn't necessarily connect in any way with the Mars square Uranus, it's still part of the new moon experience. The new moon is like a gateway. The gateway opens and the energy of a Mars-Uranus square comes in. And so the Mars-Uranus square is perhaps not just about the end of this week, it also goes into the week after, the week starting on May the 11th. And the fact that there's a new moon right at the end of a week tells us something about the overall week in general. The moon is essentially waning all of this week. So when you've got a waning moon, which you do have throughout this week, we have the concept of the end of a cycle. It's a time for endings. It's not really a time for beginnings. So if you're planning on starting something this week, maybe you should postpone until at least the week after the new moon, when you're going to be on the waxing cycle. And London time, that new moon is on Sunday, March the 10th at around 9 a.m. I now want to just consider very quickly a few people who might be influenced by the week's events, and specifically who might be influenced by that Mars square Uranus. So in that sense, you might not see anything going on this week, but it may be more about next week. But that Mars square Uranus, and indeed the new moon as well, all the action happens over the weekend, right at the end of the week, or at least most of the action. So let's start with someone. Donald Tusk. I've looked at him before. He is the Polish Prime Minister. He hasn't been in office for too long. He's already shown himself to be quite controversial amongst some people in Poland. He's very much a globalist, someone who represents the interests of the European Union. Many Polish nationalists aren't too happy with him. He's trying to roll back a lot of their laws, and for example, I don't know, there's a big battle about control of the media. Tusk his party takes a view that the old regime was trying to or perhaps succeeded in controlling the media, and he's a lot of people in the media are getting sacked. So, but there's a lot of controversy going on here, not to mention all the sort of Polish farmers worrying about cheap Ukrainian imports, I think of grain. So he has got his Mercury at 18, there you can see, he's got his Mercury at 1856 Taurus. Indeed, he's got his Mercury conjunct the South Node at 1856 Taurus. So quite a stubborn man. I mean, he is a Taurus. Born on April 22nd, so he is stubborn, perhaps unreasonably stubborn. Mercury is conjunct his South Node. He's really, really convinced that he is doing the right thing, and intellectually, there's probably a little bit of arrogance there. And the Mars square Uranus is on his Mercury, so Uranus is just past the conjunction to his Mercury, but Mars is making the square, and it's also hitting his nodes. So he might have a few issues there, and I think he has to be careful what he says. Another person to consider is the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. He was a leader during the 2017 election, where Labour did surprisingly well, but not well enough, and he was defeated by Boris Johnson in 2019. So this is Jeremy Corbyn's horoscope. And the only thing I want to say there is that Jeremy Corbyn has his Mars at 1929 Taurus. I don't know where his moon is because we don't know his time of birth. His moon might be conjunct his Mars. I don't know. Jeremy Corbyn is he's an independent at the moment because he lost the Labour Party whip. I'm not quite sure. I think it probably had something to do with what he said about Palestine and what happened on October the 7th with Hamas's attack on Israel. But he is a long-term supporter of Palestine, and so he will have. At the end of the week, he will have Uranus conjunct his Mars, and Mars square his Mars. I don't know what Jeremy Corbyn is going to be up to. He probably needs to be careful at the end of the week with Mars square Uranus. He may be a bit hasty. He needs to be careful how he goes. I mean, he's not a young man. He's born in 1949, so he'd be what, 70, coming up to 75, something like that. So yeah, he has to be careful how he goes. So it might be something quite physical, but it may be that he's involved in some aggravation, maybe regarding Palestine or some protest or something like that. So I do think that Jeremy Corbyn does have to be a bit careful. Someone who also has to be careful is the British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Now, Rishi Sunak is already in all sorts of problems. I mean, he's almost certain to lose the next election. He's just had George Galloway winning the Rochdale by-election, and I think he's made an impromptu speech talking about the dangers of extremism. I think the establishment is really shaken up by Galloway's win in the Rochdale by-election, and Rishi Sunak has a Sun-Mercury conjunction in Taurus. So, well, in fact, it's more than that. He's got Uranus opposition that Sun-Mercury conjunction. So Uranus is going to be smashing into that opposition. Well, for months, for the next few months, he's got Uranus problems. Arguably, I don't know, right through until the summer, he's got serious Uranus problems, and so at the end of the week, he's going to have Uranus conjunct his Mars, Sun-Mars conjunction. He's going to have Uranus, well, pretty close to the opposition of Uranus, and then he's going to have Mars triggering it. So he's going to have Mars hitting all those planets. So it's going to be a very difficult time for Rishi Sunak. And he is the Prime Minister. Okay, he's not the head of state, but it's going to be a troubling time for the country, and certainly for its Prime Minister. So yes, he does have to be careful. Someone else, Sam Bankman-Fried. Is he in prison? I never quite know what he's doing. Has he been sentenced? Remember, he was involved in the FTX fraud, this whole sort of Bitcoin thing, which caused Bitcoin to crash to, what was it, 15,000? It's now over 60,000. And so there is the horoscope of Sam Bankman-Fried. Just to mention that he has Venus at 1948 Aquarius. So he has got Mars conjunct his Venus, and he has got Uranus square his Venus. I don't know what that means. I don't think he's going to be particularly happy with that. There's going to be things really upsetting his peace of mind. I don't know whether he's been sentenced yet or not. So I don't know. Whoever's looking after Sam Bankman-Fried needs to perhaps consider his emotional well-being. And then there is George Soros. I do talk about him every now and then. He keeps coming up. George Soros, he's got his sun at 19 Leo, meaning that he's got Mars opposition his sun, and Uranus is going to be square his sun. So this Mars-Uranus square is hitting his sun. And I don't have his time of birth. I don't know what that means. Perhaps with Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, he's even older than Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, he's must be 93 years old. So he needs to watch out for falls. Probably. I'm sure he's very well looked after, but the people looking after George Soros possibly need to make a special effort to look after him in terms of what he's doing. Walking on his own. I don't know what his well-being is like. But yes, he does need to be his carers. If he does have carers, he must. I mean, he's rich. He must have people all over the place looking after his well-being. But those people do need to have a particular focus on detail. Someone born very close to George Soros is Janet Yellen. She's the Treasury Secretary. She's another Leo. She's born on August the 13th, 1946. And Janet Yellen also has a son at around 20 Leo. So she has the same thing as George Soros. Obviously, she is a lot younger than George Soros, but she's not as old as Trump. But I don't know. There's a lot of pressure being Treasury Secretary, isn't there? Having to deal with the economy and sanctions against Russia and America's debt, and how do you deal with the debt? How do you deal with the debt? How do you deal with supporting that debt? all these questions that Treasury secretaries have to deal with. And so maybe that's part of it. And the sun, of course, is a male planet, so the men she has to deal with, maybe Biden, she has to deal with Biden. Does she have to deal with Biden? I don't know. But the Mars square Uranus does hit her horoscope. Now, quite recently, I talked about the sort of former TV star, broadcaster Wendy Williams. I did mention her, and she has been very sick with, frontal lobe dementia, plus aphasia. And here is Wendy Williams' chart, and you can see that with Wendy Williams's chart, her ascendant is 1954 Aquarius, so she's got Mars rising. It's Mars, transiting Mars is on her ascendant, and transiting Uranus is square her ascendant. So again, anyone looking after Wendy Williams does really have to pay special attention to what they're doing. Although that might say something about how she's being publicized, it may not be about her directly. I mean, I think she's got this people have this renewed interest to her. Is there some television show about what's gone wrong with her? I don't know. I don't really know. But yeah, Wendy Williams does have Mars on her ascendant plus Uranus square her ascendant. And finally, there is the Zelenskys. So Volodymyr Zelensky. There's always something going on with Volodymyr Zelensky. And in his case, it's his MC and his midheaven. He's got his midheaven is at 2021 Aquarius, assuming he really is born at 2 p.m. So he has Mars exactly on his midheaven at a time when Uranus is squaring his midheaven. So this Mars square Uranus definitely impacts Zelensky. And there have been constant questions about how long is he going to make it? How long is he going to last as president? So this is going to put further pressure on him, I think. This Mars conjunct his Mars conjunct his midheaven. Uranus square his midheaven. It's about his job, it's his home, it's where he lives. Perhaps it's just another opportunity where he needs to reconsider his position. And this Mars square Uranus also affects his wife, Olena Zelenska. So that's his. I don't have a time of birth for Olena Zelenska, but her Venus is at 2051 Aquarius. Venus is a planet of relationships. May say something about relationships. I don't know. She has got Venus square Uranus in her natal chart. Again, I don't have a time of birth, but she has Mars. The Mars square Uranus does affect her. So Mars and Mars square Uranus is affecting them, it seems, as a couple. So those are a few people. We'll have to see what happens. When I do these, forecasts for famous people, there's a very good chance that something might happen, but are we ever going to know? It may not impact their public lives. It may just be something private that happens. It may be quite trivial, and yeah, the public may never know what happens. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish with the I Ching. And when we consider the I Ching, I would remind you that you do not have to have your I Ching done. If you don't want your I Ching done, if you don't want to forecast for this week, you don't have to have it. You can just stop the video right now. Okay, so I asked the question. What is the week starting on Monday, March the 4th, 2024, going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? The first hexagram I got was hexagram 58, the joyous. this represents two lakes, one lake above the other lake. And on the surface, it's a very happy hexagram. It's about enjoying oneself, having fun. It's quite an emotional hexagram because it's all about water. Not the water of the abyss, but the water of the lake. And so many of us are going to feel that it is a time to perhaps relax and to enjoy oneself. And that seems fine. But there are three moving lines. Third line moves, fourth line moves, sixth line moves. Now, third line tends to be unfortunate. So with the third line moves, there is a danger of complacency. Yes, we may be sort of enjoying ourselves, relaxing, having a nice week. It seems okay, things are getting better, but we might just miss things. There is work to be done. If we're just enjoying without really thinking about it, then we might make mistakes. Things might trip us up. We might miss things. And that is a real danger. Then the fourth line moves. We have to distinguish between the higher and the lower pleasures. There's a temptation for some people to just enjoy ourselves in sort of mindless ways, things that don't really move us on. We need to think about the higher pleasure, the pleasure which is perhaps harder work, which is not so immediate. That is what we should be focusing on. If we go for the lower, we could be in trouble. And then the sixth line moves, the top line moves, which is again, there is just this danger of complacency. We may kind of think that everything is okay, and with no real evidence. And this leads to the second hexagram, which is number 9, the taming power of the small. And this tells us that we do have to limit our ambitions. There really is a limit to what we can achieve. The I Ching talks about dense clouds, no rain. We cannot expect wonderful things to happen immediately. And maybe this is a reminder that this weekend there is a 45-degree aspect between Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter and Neptune have wonderful ideas about what can happen. It can be fantastic, but it can be a fantasy, and really there can be no hope of success. And so with the taming power of the small, just keep it simple. We need to restrict ourselves to small gains. If we can just stand still, that may be enough. The key thing is not to go backwards and not to allow complacency to mess things up. I now want to look at the I Ching from the perspective of money. So we start off with 58, the joyous. There's a temptation here to spend money because it's all about happiness, isn't it? We want to do what we can to make ourselves and make other people happy. But we have to make sure that in the process of making ourselves happy, we don't break something. We don't break our own finances. We don't break the bank. That we can always stand up straight and in the absolute belief that we are in the knowledge that we are financially secure. If we just get caught up in the demands of the time, we just do what other people say, we put the emphasis on enjoyment, the money will get spent. Very easy to spend money. Really, every single thing we spend money on needs to be monitored. And we have to ask ourselves, why are we buying what are we buying? Are we buying it because it's useful? or are we buying it because it's going to make us feel good, or at least we think it's going to make us feel good? And I think we do have to be careful about that, and we have to be careful about financial demands. Why do people want money from us? And there are different ways of spending money, but probably the worst way to spend money this week, given it's 58, the joyous, is on entertainment. Money should not be spent on entertainment. Money spent on entertainment is going to be a waste. I mean, maybe there are things you need to buy. I don't know. It's possible. In which case, I suppose you've got to buy them. But because you need to buy them, not because it will make you happy to buy them. And this hexagram 58, the joyous, it has some moving lines, and the fourth line, talking about the lower and the higher pleasure. The lower pleasure can be satisfied, perhaps, or you think it can be satisfied with money. The higher pleasure can't possibly be satisfied with money. The higher pleasure, of course, goes beyond money. And this hexagram does move to hexagram number 9, the taming power of the small. And that's a further reminder that we really need to run a tight ship. It is not a time for spending large amounts of money. Keep it small. Consider the possibility that you don't really have enough information to spend a lot of money. And I know it sounds boring. I know it's not really what you want to hear, but I think it really does make sense, doesn't it? Okay, so this next section I want to consider is career and business. It's a similar message with 58. There's no room for complacency. If you are working, you can't relax. Things aren't going to happen in the way you think it's going to happen. And you can't necessarily believe what other people say and what other people promise. I mean, it's human nature to want an easy life. So particularly, if you're an employee, you're going to want everything to be easy. Just do what's in front of you. Perhaps enjoy yourself where possible with your workmates. Just have an easy week. But it's just not going to be like that, because things could get complicated very quickly, and just when you think that everything is fine, something could go wrong. And if you are looking for a job, with 58, I think there's a danger that you approach the task of looking for a job in a slightly frivolous way. Maybe you think that it's okay to come over as being happy. I know everyone likes happiness, happy people. But I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't think that the people who might be offering you a job are just looking for happiness and are just looking for smiles. And it's not a time for complacency. And I think you need to keep it very serious. And I think this is also emphasized by the hexagram that 58 moves to, which is number 9, which is the taming power of the small. So whatever the situation, whether you're looking for a job or you're in a job, keep your ambitions reasonable. If you're really optimistic that something good and big is going to happen this week, remember, dense clouds, no rain. The rains are not going to come. That thing you were expecting, don't be surprised if it doesn't happen. I suppose I should have said that in the previous section when I talked about money. If you were expecting some money, again, dense clouds, no rain, don't expect that money to show up. If you're expecting some career opportunity or something to happen at work or a piece of business to come your way, then the taming power of the small is giving a similar message. Yeah, you can have your expectations, but it's probably not going to happen. The final section is relationships. And, hexagram number 58, the joyous, is, in a way, the supreme relationship hexagram. It is the joyous. It is water over water. And as a unified hexagram, in a way, it is quite fortunate. It's suggesting that, relationships are working, there's a sense of happiness, there's a sense of flow, and that's exactly, I suppose, what you want in a relationship, particularly if that relationship is of a romantic nature. But the moving lines kind of mess things up. The moving lines are difficult. That third moving line, just, you and someone else might start off being comfortable with each other. Things might be going well, but you're missing the point. There are more serious things going on, which you are not fully taking seriously. And at the same time, whatever relationship you're in, you need to consider, what is the purpose of this relationship? What is it all about? Ask yourself that. It does matter. Is it about having fun? Is it about reaching a particular goal? Do consider that purpose, and is that purpose reasonable? Because with the fourth line, there is a higher pleasure and there is a lower pleasure. It is joyous. It is about pleasure. It is about enjoying someone's company. But you can enjoy someone's company in the wrong way. You can enjoy someone's company perhaps in the lower sense, when you should really be thinking about what is the real purpose of your connection with this other person. Okay, you can look at it from, I suppose if you want, you can look at it from a spiritual purpose. Everyone comes together for a reason, and when that reason is fulfilled, they separate again. I suppose like ships in the night, they come together for a purpose and then they move away. And so think about what that purpose is, and do focus on that purpose, and don't get sidetracked. But it's still going to be difficult to get sidetracked, not to get sidetracked. And there is a big danger that you spend time with someone that perhaps is important to you, but the time you spent is wasted time, and that leads to hexagram number 9, the taming power of the small. So ideally in a relationship, again, whatever the nature of a relationship is, you just need to keep it simple. Do not have expectations about another person. Don't expect them to do something. Don't expect them to sort your life out. Don't expect someone to make a commitment. Don't expect someone to give you something. Just take the relationship as it is and be satisfied with small gains. In fact, be satisfied with the relationship just continuing to exist. That perhaps is enough. In terms of further progress, that's later. That's perhaps for another week. So, which is all I'm going to say about this week. The I Ching is a little downbeat. We do have to be careful. It's not a time for mindless enjoyment. And I think to an extent this is supported by the astrology, that Jupiter square Neptune is warning us, I think, of just getting involved in fantasy, hoping that things are going to happen. Hope. The word hopium is quite popular on the internet, isn't it? Oh, it's all just hopium. It's never going to work out like the way you think it is. So, yeah, to use that horrible word hopium, there could be quite a lot of hopium this week. And towards the end of the week, as I've already discussed, there is Mars square Uranus at the same time as a new moon. And I do think that does require careful navigation. But you should be okay. I think that Mars square Uranus and the new moon it's more going to be a collective thing. I don't think us as individuals we need worry excessively about it, but of course we shouldn't be with Mars square Uranus at the end of a week. We should avoid taking risks or doing dangerous stuff with machinery. The usual message. Just be careful. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. I will be doing another forecast for the week following, for the week starting on Monday, March the 11th. If you enjoyed this video, I would of course be grateful if you were to like it. If you are not subscribed and you enjoyed the video, yes, I'd be grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks for listening again, and I will talk to you again very soon.